And our topic today will be making the ask, how to actually ask for money from our potential donors, some of whom are alumni, some of whom are friends of the university. I think the university is unique from the beginning because at the beginning it didn't have any alumni. So a lot of the money that was contributed to the U.S. University from Rockefeller, but also Ryerson, Cobb, just look at all the buildings, the names of the professors, Donnelly. They were not alumni of the university. This university, I think, because of its really great and really outstanding, aim of what it stands for and what it executed, it really attracted a lot of support from people who had nothing to do with the university, and that's something that I think is very important to keep in mind when you consider who you should be asking and how you should be asking. This university attracts a lot of money from people who are not necessarily alumni because the mission and the accomplishments are such that if you want to support higher education, it's hard to see how you could have a better place than this one. So with that, for a start, maybe we can, why don't I let you take the next slide. There you go.
All right. So just to reiterate, asking is crucial, not just for money, but for attendance as well at events and certainly at Alumni Weekend. Nobody likes a party where there are only 3 people who've showed up. So we're just going to go through some bullet points here. Can everyone hear me okay? I know the mic is kind of phasing in and out. But fellow alumni will not give their time or their resources unless they are asked. This is a crucial point that was driven home to me by an alum that I had contacted a couple of weeks ago in downtown Chicago. I emailed him and I said, hey, I think we share some interests. I'd be interested in speaking with you about your career trajectory, what you ended up doing with your life, because obviously as a recent and currently unemployed graduate of the college, I am thinking a lot about these sorts of existential issues. And he got back to me 2 weeks later with deepest apologies. He said, you should have emailed me back sooner when you hadn't heard from me within 48 hours. U of C alumni are all very nice people, which may be a lie, but more importantly, what he said was, we all want to help, but we usually forget because we're busy.
They're all very interesting people.
Interesting is speaking in code. I like that. But the point is, obviously, everyone's busy. People are engaged in all sorts of high-stress, high-profile pursuits. Sometimes these things, making your gift, making the attendance registration for Alumni Weekend in a timely fashion, they fall by the wayside, so asking is really important. It's too easy to ignore an ask in a letter or an email. A personal ask, however, is meaningful. This is generally especially true if you happen to know somebody, but even then, I can say definitively, having probably bugged at least half this room from the Alumni Telefund during my 4 years in the college, that I bet you would appreciate having Ed call you if you were class of 1978,
well,
rather.
It's not just a class of 1978. The part of when you're asking who you are is part of your pitch. If you are like an older professional, and I think you can approach someone. In my year, I'm 53 now. And it's easier for me to approach someone in the 50s or 60s than for Martin, although you're a very distinguished young man. I mean, it's just the right person. And similarly, somebody who's just out of college, if they get a pitch from me, they might say, oh, what's this old guy want? He's made a lot of money and I haven't made any money, so how can he be asking me for money? So I think it's very important. Who you are is a big part of whether your message will be effective. So that's a good point to make.
Yeah, no, that's definitely quite correct. What I was sort of driving at as well, though, is that each of us as alumni, and especially further and further that we get out, we acquire vast networks. Obviously, a few of them formal, but also many of them informal. And networks tend to grow over time. And not just shrink as it might seem on first glance. And generally, if you can connect with somebody, even if the pitch is as simple as, oh yeah, we had Soch together back, in my case 5 years ago. Wasn't reading Marx terrible. I think everybody can assent to that proposition. So as an alumnus, you have a shared experience and are a peer, even if you don't know them personally. I think Ed sort of really hammered that point home, and the point about Marx as well, I think
it's very important to read Marx.
to know, if only to know how the enemy thinks. But oftentimes, alumni prefer to be asked by a peer versus a university development officer. This is, again, something that I can attest to firsthand, having worked for 4 years in the Alumni Telefund. It's generally more well received if you're speaking to people, as Ed mentioned, of your peer group, people who shared the same experiences that you did, people who understand the concerns of a constituency from your specific moment in university history, than a student who's calling to hopefully get a warm meal once a week. So.
Think positive and smile. Okay. Review the call sheet for information. Think positive. You're making it significant. Enjoy. All right. So what this means is that when you're doing the work, and all of you are alumni, right? So when you're making this call, don't get too glum, because in fact, as I said at the beginning, the University of Chicago is a really excellent institution.
They're just sample call sheets.
Okay. Oh, call sheets, yes. And there's one thing about the University of Chicago. I have never been embarrassed by a university as a general rule. It's really a worthwhile project, and whether you're an alum or not, I think you're not going to say, oh my God, they did that again, or they awarded this doctorate to somebody that shouldn't have gotten it, or something like that. You hardly ever do that. When people get upset at the university, it's because the Common Core is being tinkered with. So that's the sort of thing you want to see. So I think the point of this slide is really that you want to take it as a positive step. You're not asking them to do anything immoral or bad or anything like that. It's a good thing. So approach the job with a positive attitude.
Great. So step 2 in the process, be personable. Hopefully that's not too difficult at this point. And explain yourself. Say hello immediately, then state that you're calling as a member of your specific committee. Obviously the committee titles can get a little squirrely. They're committees on committees about committees. So, basically, don't get too wrapped up in the details. Just say you're calling from the University of Chicago and what the general purpose is. If you're a union, if you're calling on behalf of the class of 2010, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Establish a rapport. Ask how somebody's doing. Maybe ask about a career, family. It's probably less advisable when you're calling somebody my age. Hopefully, there aren't the same familial issues. But if it is a reunion year, and this is important, ask if they plan to attend. So much of the work that we do on the reunion committees, and I'm on the first reunion right now, is not only driving towards this sort of year-long fundraising campaign, but also trying to keep generally very busy, generally not terribly well-paid people in contact with the group of friends and the networks that they had established in college, and keeping them associated with the university and wanting to come back for more in 4 years.
Okay, so how many people noticed the outrageous thing that he just said? How many of you are graduates of the college as opposed to okay, so just a few. He said they're having a first-year reunion. Had you ever heard of that? Any of you? And that tells you how much school spirit, to use seldom used word around here, has really grown. And if you look at it, I would say John Boyer became dean in 1992. I would bet that half of all the graduates, BAs, awarded by the University of Chicago are signed by John Boyer. Think about that. The college is growing. It's getting hot, as you know, but it's really, there's a big mass of maybe we missed it because I'm class of 78, but there's a real enthusiasm, and it's a very attractive and enjoyable place to go. So keep that in mind when you're calling about reunion year or whatever. You don't need you don't have to wait 5 years. You can do every year. You have a reason to call. In my own class of 78, we have a class council that tries to keep things together between the 5 years. In fact, one of the problems that we had before was that we would have reunions every 5 years and then close up shop for the next 4 years and then try to start from scratch on the 5th year. So keep that in mind. You're on a winning team. You're on a team that's getting momentum, and don't wait for the special event. Every year you can make a pitch. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then sort of once you've established some sort of rapport, there's a nice sort of personal rhythm. The ice is broken, hopefully. Transition into your personal involvement. Tell your story. Don't be afraid. As Ed was saying before, you're a part of the pitch. So, you don't just want to say, well, the university has a 4-to-1 faculty ratio, and that's great, and we need more, financial assistance for that.
No, we need more dorms.
We need more dorms. Whatever the pitch may be, you would cast that point instead in terms of, well, I wrote an undergraduate thesis with Professor Ralph Lerner in the Committee on Social Thought, and the sort of attention that I received as an undergraduate from somebody who only works with graduate students ordinarily was fantastic, and this really could only happen at the U of C. If I had been elsewhere, I would have been a number, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, it's talking about dorms. I can relate to this. I lived in the Broadview. I don't know if anyone else in the room.
Been demolished yet?
No, it's one of the last holdouts, unbelievably. Although I think it's just being forgotten now that the Shoreland has been sold off.
It'll fall of its own accord.
Hopefully sooner rather than later. So obviously I think that's also an important sort of tangential point, making light of, if you can, or at least sort of putting a good face on issues that maybe you were less sanguine about when you were in college. Obviously, when I was encountering the roaches that were waking me up in the morning, I didn't particularly enjoy the experience, but looking back on it now, I can say, well, there was a certain degree of charm. Was there a question?
No, I was just going to make a comment. I guess as I think about the calls that I've tried to make on behalf of the university and my own personal experiences in this regard, I found this is my own personal side. My own experience, so what's worth. I'm not trying to advocate anything. I find myself a little uncomfortable in a phone interaction. I'm just not a phone type person, actually. So what I usually end up doing is asking the person if they want to go out to lunch.
Well, that's a good one. I think the point here is just writing a letter or writing an email,
yes,
which is what I often do, but then you have to follow it up with either a call or a personal conversation.
Because it allows me to sort of, the yield on some of these activities can be quite, not, you're not going to get 100% return on them. So you, at a minimum, by going out and meeting with them in person, I at least get to know them.
Right. Well, it also depends on what's at stake. A lot of times in our class reunions, I ask for participation. That is, I want $100, but we want to get our participation up to 35, 38, 40%, which I think is the important thing when you're dealing with that. But on the other hand, when I ask for money for the Chicago Society, it's $2,500. So there, I think it's you got to at least make the phone call, and a lunch or getting together for drinks is.
That's what I'm referring to. Is my Chicago Society calls are different.
Right. No, you gotta. Yeah, you absolutely gotta have a personal touch.
Work a different angle a little bit. But anyway, I think everyone has their own personal styles of how to go about doing this. What you're comfortable with personally, individually, is what you should go with. The way that you interact with people. I'm not very good on the phone, frankly, so I'm not going to do anything on the phone, frankly. And I agree. Most people don't respond to my emails, frankly. My emails.
Well, I've had some that did, but
okay, well, that's great.
but then before I could call them, so that's okay. That's the best.
All right, that's good. Everyone has their own experience. I'm just making it.
Good. And don't hesitate to raise your hand, and we'll be happy to take your comments and questions.
Can I just also add, I think that's an excellent point. The phone is an inherently awkward medium. You're talking to somebody without receiving the social signals that having them
But
there.
traders do that all the time.
Well, if you have clandestine training, then we'd like to recruit you. But you probably shouldn't be advertising the clandestine training. I think more to the point, if you're not comfortable with the interactions that you're getting on the phone, that's one solution. But there are also a variety of strategies that hopefully we're going to elicit over the course of the next 30 minutes that might also help just sort of off the top of my head, one piece of advice that tends to work well, and it's a bit abstract, is just asking questions that are open-ended, that aren't yes or no questions, trying to prevent those really awkward silences in conversations with somebody that you've just met, and again, when you're not seeing them and receiving the body language, the subtle social signals. Instead of asking, did you enjoy your time at the university? So what was your favorite experience at the university? Also, again, if you have the opportunity to place a positive spin on things, I think that's fantastic.
Make the case for giving. Be purposeful and concise. It's easy when you're calling for a reunion because then you have the goals. The committee participation is always what I focus on. And the fact that you're a volunteer. You're calling for class council, that's in between your unions usually, and Chicago Society is very important because those are slightly higher amounts. And then you should talk about class goals. I think in the case of our class, and most college classes, we really are trying to get it up to like 40%. Also, U.S. News and World Report focuses on class participation, so that's important. And it doesn't matter, even if you start with $100. If you look at the literature on philanthropy, there are a lot of cases where people who gave $100 for 10, 20, 30 years, all of a sudden, they had a big promotion or a bonus, or they died, and they left big chunks of money to their institution. So I think it's better just to keep them, as Tim was saying, keep people engaged. Now, if you go about making the case for giving in general, David Booth was a graduate student in the business school, and he came to go into the PhD program, but he left for an MBA because he really didn't want to be a PhD. He wanted to go into business. And 2 years ago, he gave $300 million to name the university's business school. And when he gave that, his statement at the press conference was that he didn't consider it to be a gift. He considered it to be a distribution to his business partner. And so think about that. And I think it's true in any profession and in any business that you go into. Think about who is your business partner in your profession. If you're a teacher, a researcher, a lawyer, a doctor, a business executive like David Booth, who's your partner? I mean, you have partners in your business, but as I look back, I would not be where I am at all if I had not come to the college and the law school. And so it's not unreasonable to talk to someone who has a successful profession and remind them that a lot of their success, reading and writing. Tim Child taught in the Little Red Schoolhouse program, which it's now English 130. And I remember I didn't take that as an undergrad, but I took it as one of these alumni events. And I got to tell you, my career has been greatly improved by my ability to write. And sometimes, I'm successful in a way that I didn't think I should have been successful, but I was a good communicator. So you got to think, who is your business partner? And I think that's one of the strongest ways to appeal to alumni, especially, because you say to them, look, you're a lawyer, you're a professional, a business executive, whether you went to the business school or the law school, or you went to the college, or in any other profession. If you go into teaching and you now have a tenured position or whatever, you got to think about who's your partner, who helped you do this, and that's really what it is. It's not just it's not totally philanthropic. It's almost like an obligation. These people taught you what you think. What do you think?
I think that's a phenomenal point. I've actually emphasized the use of the concept partnership on a slightly different sense. I think not just sort of your relationship to the university as a partnership. Certainly that's correct, and I had never thought of it in those terms, and I think that's wonderful. But I mean, the university itself, I mean, the whole endeavor is a partnership between, as Ed mentioned, rather eloquently before, this group of gentlemen who were brought together by John Rockefeller and his generosity in the 1890s. Those that came before us, and with each successive generation, took what they did from from those that had come before them, and left the university a markedly better place than they had found it. And I think that's a sort of tradition that we've all inherited, certainly.
Well, let me give you a backwards case of that. Pritzker, they endowed the medical school. We know they're very philanthropic in Chicago. I live in New York. Whenever I travel, if I can stay at a Hyatt, I try, why not? I know they own it. Let's give them some business. And so that's one practical approach to this. And I don't think they were I don't think they were alumni when they endowed the medical school. So that's another example of what I was talking about before, that university gets, there are a lot of friends of university that are not necessarily alumni, but people who want to contribute to a world-class higher education project, and really to be associated with that world-class project for their own interest. Not everyone's not totally philanthropic. There's some self-interest in that, and so people want to be associated with a winning team.
Yeah, I think.
Okay. Let me move on to the next one. Okay, so you got to make the ask. Go ahead.
Okay, so making the ask, also the title of the session. We're getting somewhere. Transition to making the ask right away. Don't linger or allow them to say no or end the conversation before you make the ask. Now, this is typically one of the most difficult aspects of a call to pull off artfully. Obviously, you don't want to just keep talking with the idea being that they won't have a chance to say no if they can't get a word in edgewise. That usually doesn't work very well. But what you do want to do is keep the conversation moving. As I mentioned before, awkward silences, usually detrimental to progress. Try to keep the conversation flowing in an organic way, and try and learn to sort of transition from a point about, say, as Ed said, housing to I lived in Broadview and it was terrible to. Therefore, fundraising is essential to creating a better student life. Or, as I mentioned before, faculty-student ratio. Well, my personal experience was this, and this is wonderful, and this is an aspect of the university that we should preserve, but we can only do so with the assistance of alumni and friends like yourself. So if appropriate, thank them for past gifts or volunteer service as a lead into the ask. I think that's really helpful advice. Don't let it trip you up if the conversation is moving organically as it has been, and it would be awkward to sort of interject with that. It's probably not the best place for it, but do remember, obviously, usually you're going to be speaking with people with extraordinary records of generosity to the university, both time and with money. I know Ed flew out here for the weekend on Thursday night. Obviously, that sort of commitment above and beyond, whatever financial commitments he might be making is incredible, and it's something that should be noted and sort of appropriately commented upon.
Yeah, and I think you have to ask. You can't be so shy that you make the call and you don't get around to asking. You really have to ask. And it's in the last 2 or 3 years with the Chicago Society in New York City, I think we've run into more, not just me, but run into more situations where people are saying, well, I can't afford to do that right now. We didn't get the bonuses that we were expecting, or worse. And it's a very awkward situation. But you really have to ask. The story goes that when President Harper got a bunch of money from Rockefeller, and Harper would, after 10 or 15 years, Rockefeller paying for this every year, Harper would go out to New York City and meet with Rockefeller and tell him, this is where we are, these are our plans, we'd like to get more money so we can start a law school, and so on. And then, but eventually Rockefeller said to him, no, don't tell me any more about this. I don't want to hear it. So they were both Baptists, so they would pray, and he would say, oh Lord, please let us have this and that, and we're working so hard. So one way or another, you have to make the ask. You can't back down, right?
Yeah, and I think also what I had been mentioning before about turning points on their head such that making the ask is natural, that's important, but point 3 up here, always asking with a definite amount of money in mind, and also, just sort of asking explicitly. Don't leave the suggestion on the table. make sure that you're always saying, something like, it doesn't have to be verbatim, would you consider a gift to the university of, but it should be a question, it should include a dollar amount, it should include the word gift. These are all crucial aspects.
Absolutely. Stop talking. All right. This is a good time for that. Any questions or comments that you guys want to, any experiences that you guys have had? I don't know it ranges from the Chicago Society to class calling for your gift, class reunions, class councils, whatever it is. So,
I have an experience.
Go ahead.
I did, I'm class of 82, and I did our 25th reunion calling, and I found that I had the best experience with people I didn't know at all. And I thought that there's a lot of us didn't know each other in the class, and it was interesting. My numbers were really so much higher for those than for my friends. And so you can really expect almost anything. And I was surprised how when people, they hadn't been contacted by the university at all, and they hadn't had as much interaction as some of us as volunteers have been. And it was really kind of fun. It was especially fun to meet new people in my class.
25 years after you graduated?
Yeah.
Well, I think we're trying to make sure that you do that 25 years earlier, or 29 years when you start. But that's really one of the challenges. I'm from the class of '78, and I think a lot of those classes, they were very atomistic, and part of it is that we lived like graduate students. We moved out to apartments after our first year in the dorms. And I think that's why Dean Boyer is pushing to build more dorms, because you really need that community and then networks that come from that community. And when I've done fundraising over the years, I find that the connections to the house are probably the single most important element of whether you're going to get contributions from alumni, and including the house intramural team. A lot of people, for example, when the Radnor Center was put up, a lot of money came in for individual, people couldn't pay for the whole thing, but they could pay for part of it. And a lot of those people were people who had played on their house intramural basketball or whatever, and that's very important. And in fact, the house intramural teams, even if you move out after a couple of years, if you keep your connection to the house, that's, I think, very important. So that's a good illustration. I think people are now a lot more cohesive. Would you have thought in your year of having a first-year reunion?
No.
Right. So that's good.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Words of affirmation at this point? Okay. Well, we'll assume that we're taking stop talking in a literal sense. Let them answer before you speak again. I think that's sort of self-evidently the case, hopefully. It falls under the general rubric of be polite, but sort of back and before that, you don't just want to keep talking and keep rambling after you've made the ask. You don't want to try to preempt any sort of, I know you're going to say this. Let me say this. After you've made the ask, give the other person a chance to speak, and listen. Not speaking allows the individual to respond directly to your ask and not shift the conversation. I think that's an important point as well. Also, self-evident, a true one.
You don't want to be babbling. Okay, common responses. Okay, I need to think about it. That's always a good. I need to talk to my wife. I need to ask permission from my wife. Something like that. I guess that's not a bad thing, because it is a family contribution, especially if you're at the higher ends, like the Chicago Society. But if it's $100 for your class reunion, that's not a good excuse. Somebody should be able to make that decision themselves. How much are others giving? I always, everyone's giving a lot of money. I don't know what you can say. If you're calling for the Chicago Society, everybody's giving $2,500. If you're calling for your class, you just, really, I say $100, and they can go from there if they want to do that. If they say I can't do that much, that's fine. You can't. You're not going to coerce them, or this is all voluntary. And especially the last couple of years, I think there's been a decline in in philanthropy, although University of Chicago has not had such a great decline as other institutions, but that's because we're getting better at philanthropy. And so even though there's a decline, we're still going up because we have so many untapped alumni and friends that we had not been tapping. So it's kind of like 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. But if they say you can't do that much, that's fine. I already gave last year. That's not a good answer because the school years come one after the other, and maybe you can't give as much as you gave last year. Maybe last year you had a very good bonus, or you got a promotion or something, and you can't match that this year. But I think you cannot take that for an answer. And then I'll give later or online. It's fine to give online, but they should give it. They should give now, not push it off into some other time. Do you have a question?
I had a comment.
Sure.
I'm in sales. I get this all the time. All of these. But I just want to say that.
So what do you tell them?
I need to think about it. I need to talk to my family. I mean, I usually acknowledge it and say I can understand it, but then I immediately would say, so can I call you back on Monday?
Okay, right. You got to make a time. Right.
I don't get how much others giving. I can't give that much, and
Mhm.
I mean, I just think gracious and say, well, I understand that, but we appreciate anything because we need your
Right.
support. Or you gave last year, great. How much would you like to give this year? I mean, I just go, great. How much?
No, you want to say, can you give this amount this year?
Yeah. But I mean, I already gave last year. Whenever they say that, I just say, oh, that's great. Well, how much would you like to give this year?
Right.
So, right. And then I'll give later online. I would do the same with that and say, when would you like me to call and follow up? I mean, I just always heard.
So you make the second phone call.
Yeah.
See, because for a lot of people, it's hard to make the first phone call.
Yeah, but seriously, you'll probably get half of them
Right.
the second time around.
Right, because
I mean,
they get you
you can tell, I mean, some people, and then frankly, I've been honest with people, and I'll just say, look, if you really can't do this, I understand that the school could really use your help, and it's okay.
Mhm.
And it's interesting, some people say, no, seriously, I just need a month. And some will say, well, it's really tight.
Well, one answer that's not here, and I've got this from, is, the university is rich. So I say, well, that's okay. You can still use $100 or whatever.
Well, I do think it's easier. I always thought it was easier if they had some sense. Well, I'm calling parents.
Mhm.
So I'm in the parents committee. So
You're calling parents? You mean after they're paying tuition, room and board, you're asking for more money? You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
And last year we had, I think they give you 12 to call, and I think 8 out of the 12 don't even.
Really?
Yep, and I mean.
We're getting the right parents then. We should recruit the parents, man.
It's between $100 and $500.
Okay.
Not huge amounts.
Right.
But people gave, but I think half of it was when I called because he said this to get rid of the school is rich or pay tuition. Actually, first-year parents are usually so excited, and I say, any gift is appreciated, and this goes directly for your child's benefit, and
Right.
which is what they told us it did. It went for housing and it went for their house, and so I think also if you're a first-year parent, when you get that immediate, it's going for my kid's house or whatever, it's easier.
Are parents still doing that the last couple of years? Or when? I guess you were.
Yeah, well, do you know who Kelly Finn is? She was a UC graduate. For the benefit of people, who is this young gal who was 25 and was very active, was the college's liaison for this parent and family partnership.
Mm-hmm.
She was outstanding. I mean, she gave everybody a notebook with tab, what to say, what to do, when to do. I mean, she's amazing. And I asked her. They had a goal of $400,000 because it's kind of a new initiative, and it's really for first and second year students, I think. And last year the goal was, I think, the year before was 325. Last year they made 350, and they knew because of the economy it wouldn't do very well.
Right.
But the committee had expanded last year, and all the staff, and they were at about 360 or 370 with 3 weeks to go. And she said, I know we really won't make it. Well, you know what? We went over 400,000.
Wow, that's great.
So that's pretty good.
And the Odyssey scholarship was oversubscribed. They needed 38 million. They got 44.
Yeah.
So that's a good sign.
Frankly, because a lot of it is strictly, believe it or not, it really is a numbers game. I mean, it's just sheer numbers. You just have to keep going and follow up. And a lot of people, I think 50%, if you can tell people legitimately say, I can't do this right now, but, or they may say, I'm getting a bonus in September, whatever. You mark that down and you call, and 50% of the time you will get the money.
Good.
So I think we actually, we may be skipping ahead to the answers to some of these two, but none of these mean no. I think we've been meditating on that point.
Yeah, don't give up.
What does it mean then? Anybody want to hazard a guess? It's the best part. It's the big reveal. It's like when you find out it was, Colonel Mustard in the kitchen with the crowbar. Oh.
There you go.
Oh, they changed this. Oh, wow. All right, well, you have to wait for the answer. I'm sorry. No, I'm just kidding, actually. What it really means is I'm not comfortable giving now. Or if, the response is I can't give that much, it's I'm not comfortable giving that much. None of that means no in a sort of total sense.
Everybody can give something, I think, generally.
Yeah, I mean, I worked on the senior class gift last year. And
that was amazing. 80% participation.
81%. Yeah, it is.
That was great.
Yeah, no, it was.
You guys have much more class spirit than we did.
But I don't know if the majority, but I would imagine the plurality of our contributions were actually $1. So
that's fine. At least they're on the books.
And that I mean is a very strong case for everybody, or at least more than 4/5 of everybody being able to do something. And as Ed mentioned before, studies suggest that getting people involved early and keeping them involved throughout the crucial early years will pay rather significant dividends later. So, how to respond? We've already been talking about this, so we'll go over some of these a little more quickly, I'd imagine. Don't apologize. Now, what that's getting at is don't apologize for asking. Don't apologize for the university. It's certainly, there's nothing to be ashamed of in trying to help the university. And it's difficult to distinguish that sort of apology from the sort of sympathetic or perhaps even the empathetic response to, an objection like, well, I just lost my job, something like that. I'm unemployed. I think still something like close to a third of my class, they were unemployed over the summer. I know people in the job-seeking process right now. Some of our committee members, even on the first reunion committee, are yet unemployed. And these are these are issues that we're dealing with and really trying to sort of get past the idea, even with very dedicated volunteers, that there's something inherently wrong in asking on behalf of the university. Asking what would you be comfortable giving is good. If you can still find a way to ask for a specific amount of money, I think it's better. I think one of the reasons that we talked about on the previous page, asking for a specific amount, it's twofold. I mean, there's a syntactic point, which is when you ask, are you comfortable giving $100, and somebody says no, again, that's not no in the sort of total sense, but no, I'm not comfortable giving $100. And when you say, what would you be comfortable giving, you're ceding that ground for the kind of total. Well, I'm not. So if there's some way you can sort of, even if you're going for participation. Now, obviously, Ed's been talking a lot about Chicago Society or $100 participation gifts. For a lot of people, in some of the younger alumni classes, a participation gift maybe is. We like to do class years, $20.10, for 2010. That might be something, you might consider. Maybe it's a little hokey if you're talking to somebody cynical. Maybe you just want to say $25. Try to pitch it where you think it will be effective. But again, I think it's important if you can still find a way without coming across as crass to ask for a specific amount. Instead, that's fantastic. And then obviously, this is something we've talked about a lot, and something that we will probably continue to talk about a lot, not just us, but the whole university. Participation. Obviously, this is an effort that's paid some dividends for those of you who were paying attention to this number over the last couple of years. We had a great year last year, and we would really like to improve upon that effort this year. And as Ed mentioned, trying to get north of 40% participation from as many classes as possible is a huge effort. What's important about that, it's not just U.S. News and World Reports. I mean, obviously, system limits is a good reason and a real reason for everything. And U.S. News and World Report's maybe one real reason, but there are other real reasons that also happen to be good reasons. It's a reflection in in a most basic, but also, I mean, in a most fundamental way, of the emphasis and the value that you place upon the gratitude for your education. And I think that's a point that you can make without the risk of arousing the ire of assorted U of C alumni regarding college rankings. This is something, I mean, is University of Chicago market economics. You're invested in your education, and you're putting a sort of, I mean, in a crude way, a financial stake on that gratitude. And then this point here, let them know you can take the gift over the phone or take their pledge amount. That's good. Obviously, all things being equal, we would prefer that you're able to record it right there, that you don't have to follow up. But as this conversation from several minutes ago had indicated, following up is hugely important. If somebody says, I can't give, and it means, of course, what? I can't give now, it would behoove you to follow up, because as she mentioned, the results are usually good. But moreover, I think just with the plethora of philanthropic opportunities in the world today, the default reaction, even for causes that are regarded as generally good ones, is sometimes to say, well, I'll think about it, I'll call later. Staying persistent is important. Being able to address the now aspect of the I can't give now with another call, tailoring your efforts to someone's schedule.
If they say I can't give now, that's giving you a lead that you should follow up.
Right. So I apologize. I was unclear.
That's something that they often say, and then you got to follow up.
Yeah. But even if even if you're hearing no, what you're really hearing is I can't give now, and there's got to be some sort of endpoint to that, some point where there is a possibility to follow up.
So I do a lot of fundraising for the law school as well as the college. And in law school, you come out and you have associates. So I often hit up associates in my firm. They probably feel, oh, this partner is harassing me or something. And so you have to use a light touch. But a lot of these folks, especially the last couple of years, they come out of law school and maybe they have a lot of debts and they're working like dogs and they're thinking, why should I give money back to the law school? So I think you have to, they very often they don't want to say no to a partner, but they'll duck the issue. And I think you just have to be persistent and really use a soft sell in situations like that. Okay, what if they say no? You might ask them why they said no. As we were saying, make sure it doesn't mean not right now. Listen, don't argue. But if you feel comfortable challenging assumptions, for example, a lot of times I hear back that the university is rich, why should I have to give them any more money? Well, the university is very well off, but relative to our competitive peers, we're not as rich. And don't get into an argument. That's always a good idea when you're asking for something. And thank them for sharing and offer to relay their concerns back to the university. A lot of times the reason people say no is because they had some kind of negative experience at the university. And they're very grateful for their education, but something happened. I know some examples. People had their financial aid reduced, and they felt like they had been bait and switch, come here, and then the second and third years they had less financial aid. So that people carry that for the rest of their lives. They say, okay, well, I'm glad I got my degree, but I'm not giving those jerks any money. Other things like the housing situation. A lot of times people are grateful that for their college experience and learning how to write and so on, but they feel like they didn't have the full college experience. I don't mean going to Michigan and the football games and all that, but just like we're starting with their housing situation, and then we all move out to apartments, and that can be very atomistic. So those are the sort of things that I've heard over 30 years. Even very grateful alumni, but something happened. Financial aid is one, housing situations another, where it's hard to overcome. All right, so this is a good, go ahead. A good part.
So say thank you and follow up. Thank them again for their time and consideration. This is, I suppose, if somebody's given in the past, there should be at least 2 thank yous. One for past giving, and then also, for taking the time to talk and share thoughts. After the call, this is really good. Send a follow-up email or thank you note. While email is nice because you can email quickly, you can do it same day. Maybe catch somebody while the thought is fresh in their mind, and also attach a link to the Make a Gift website if they didn't make the gift already. If there's a way to, if you have the time to both drop a same-day email, and it can be short, relatively informal, just saying thanks, and then also write a handwritten note. I don't know how true this is with some of the older classes, but with the senior class gift, with the first reunion, so few people really use written correspondence.
Well, nobody can write anymore. But it's interesting. I'm class of '78, and for some reason, we had a very good year this year, fundraising. The 30th anniversary was 2 years ago. But we've kept it up, and we have a class council in between. And this year we had a very good rate of participation. And so what we did was the people in the class council divided up all the names, like 20 for each, and we sent handwritten notes with little personal notes, which it takes half an hour, and you have to write it out. And I think it's a very nice touch.
Yeah, it's tremendously effective. I mean, we found the same thing with thanking
nowadays
people.
You can just send email or Twitter.
Thank
you.
Yeah.
Are we running out of time, or? Oh, okay.
All right.
That is out of time.
Report the results of the call to your staff liaison. This is important. Just stay in touch. Let people know where you are. Don't go too far off the reservation.
And that's it. So
we're going to thank you for your time and consideration now.
If you have any questions or comments, we're happy to listen before we wrap up. Yes?
Well, no, I was just going to say, maybe you have the same book, but this book that Kelly Finn put together for the parents and family, it goes through all of this, and so it's just a matter. I mean, it's
Well, we should
really
get
outstanding.
okay.
So I would ask that group. I mean, for anybody who needs help or something.
Jamie, do you know that book?
I don't. Actually.
Okay, Kelly Finn, you better get the book.
Now Lee Ernst is the parent and family.
Right, I know Lee Ernst, yeah.
But they send out this binder, and for someone who's not in sales, who's never
Right.
done any of this, anybody could read through this.
Well, that would be good to have for
all those points. Yeah, they should just distribute it for everyone.
for class councils, for example.
It's terrific.
But I really admire you, because I would never have the courage to call parents after
Did
the.
I call all the first year?
Oh,
Yeah, in fact, that's my favorite thing to do.
all right. Well, sign her up.